As far as I was concerned, they were too clumsy, hairy or boorish, sometimes all three at once. Around here, everyone had a bit of land and a few animals, and that's the smell they carried around with them, of sweat and stables. If I had to imagine making love, I preferred to think about a woman. Better the sharp cheekbones of a girl than a man's prickly skin. But best of all was to stay single, accountable to no one. Actually, I wouldn't have minded becoming a nun. I was more excited about the idea of removing myself from the world than having a family. But it's always been difficult to think about God. Whenever I thought about him, I got confused. Erich was the only one I ever looked at. I'd see him go by at dawn, his hat pulled over his forehead, his cigarette already hanging from the side of his mouth at that hour. Each time I wanted to go to the window to say hello, but if I'd opened it, Ma would have been cold, and she'd surely have shouted at me to close it immediately. "Trina, are you crazy?" she'd have shrieked. Ma was always yelling. And in any case, even if I'd opened the window, what would I have said to him? At 17, I was so awkward that at best I'd have stammered. So I just stayed there, watching him walk towards the woods, while Grau, his spotted dog, drove on the flock. When he was with the cows, Erich dragged himself around so slowly that he hardly seemed to move at all. So I'd bend my head over my books, sure that I'd see him in the same place. When I raised it, he looked tiny at the end of the road, under larches that are no longer there. That spring, I found myself thinking of Erich more and more often, my books open and a pencil in my mouth. When Ma wasn't bustling about 2 feet away, I'd ask Pa if the farmer's life was one for dreamers. After hoeing the garden, you can go to the fields with your animals, sit down on a rock and stay there in peace and quiet, watching a river that has been flowing peacefully for who knows how many centuries, and a cold and infinite sky. Farmers can all do that, can't they, Pa? Pa chuckled, his pipe between his teeth. Go and ask the boy you watch from your window every morning, if his is the work of a dreamer. The first time I talked to him, he was in the farmyard. Pa worked as a carpenter in Rhesia, but even our home seemed like his workshop. People were always coming and going, asking him to repair something. When the visitors left, Ma grumbled that we never had any peace. And he, unable to put up with the least criticism, would tell her there was nothing to grumble about, since a craftsman is working even when he's offering someone a drink or stopping for a chat. That's how he builds his clientele. To cut the discussion short, she'd tweak his nose, that spongy nose of his. It's grown bigger, she'd say. So has your ass. Ma would lose her temper. Look who I married, a real lowlife. And she'd toss the tea towel at him. Pa would smirk and throw his pencil at her. Another rag from her, another pencil from him. Throwing things was their way of loving each other. That afternoon, Erich and Pa stood smoking, their eyes wide, as they watched the clouds falling over the Ortler Alps. Pa told him to wait for a moment while he went to fetch a glass of grappa. Erich wasn't much of a talker. He'd lift his chin with a faint smile and a confidence that made me feel small. What are you going to do after you finish school? Teach? He asked me. Maybe, yes. Or I might go somewhere far away, I answered, trying to sound like an adult. As soon as I said that, his face darkened. He pulled so hard on his cigarette, the ash nearly burned his fingers. I never want to leave Curòn, he said, gesturing towards the valley. I looked at him like a child who's run out of words, and Erich caressed my cheek as he left. Tell your father I'll have a grappa with him some other day. I nodded, unsure what else to say. I sat there, my elbows on the table, watching him go.